So we got a diverse group here. We have some people that are recognize their names from classes, and then I see some people I don't recognize. But at any rate, I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar. So I work for Texas Tech. Primarily, I teach in the viticulture certificate program, but I also teach undergraduate classes. And also have my own vineyard. So have some practical experience. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is a little bit about mechanical weed control. And weeds are, even though, I'm a practitioner, but I have a lot of weeds. And so I have similar problems as to everybody else. We do have, so Myron Strong is with Gearmore, so they're a major supplier of agricultural implements. And he's going to talk about his particular brand, which we do actually have a one of his machines at the Texas Tech Vineyard in Lubbock that we are playing around with. So have some experience with that one. But there's multiple. And sorry, Myron, I'm probably but there are multiple different machines out there. They all have different strengths and different weaknesses. And the other thing that we probably need to think about and talk about is when we look at weed control, we sometimes think it's either or, and it probably is if you're an organic vineyard, or if you're trying something, if you're in that vein, then you may not have any other options other than mechanical weed control. But if you're, but if you're not, really, we need to think about integrating. We need to talk about integrating the mechanical in along with the herbicides that we might be using. So oftentimes it's not just one or the other. So some things that I have seen you personally using mechanical weed control is that just like herbicides, timing is everything. If you let the weeds get big, whether you're trying to use herbicides or whether you're trying to use mechanical methods, you're really, timing is everything. So you can't let the weeds get out of control. So there's that. The other thing I've noticed with mechanical weed control that it's a little more, the soil moisture is much more critical when you're using the machines than maybe with herbicides. Although, depending on what herbicide you're using, we don't want to put out herbicides when the weeds are stressed. So it seems like we have to pay attention to, multiple things. Just because you can use mechanical weed control, not all the conditions are going to work at the right time. And then the other thing is just the amount of time that it takes to do weed control in any whether it's mechanical or chemical. So I will say that probably these machines, mechanical weed control methods can run relatively fast. Almost always you have options to do both sides if you purchase a two-sided machine. And of course, doing two sides is way more efficient than doing one side. But you typically have a lot higher cost associated with buying the other side. Sorry, Myron. Um,
Yeah, it's expensive.
so you have to kind of weigh your time versus your capital investment. And then the other thing is you probably need to be creative with how we purchase these machines. So you don't necessarily have to be the sole owner of the machine. You could set up a sharing situation where more than one vineyard could use it. Although, I mean, that comes with its own problems, and then almost everybody wants to use it at the same time. But it would soften the blow of the cost of the machines. So, um, and so that's kind of the introductory part of it. So Myron does work with Gearmore. And Myron used to live in Stockton. Well, used to live in Stockton, California, and I lived in. And we had a nice little chat about Charter Way in Stockton, California, because I used to, when I lived in California, I had a lot of customers that were on Charter Way,
Yeah.
Stockton, California. And Stockton is a very interesting place. Maybe one of the, historically one of the rougher places in California. Not a big city, but one of the rougher places that's ever been. So anyway, it was a nice little trip down memory lane talking to Myron about Stockton, California. So I've been more scared in Stockton, California than I have been in downtown Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I'll just say that because I was sitting at a stoplight and there was a drug bust, and I was kind of like,
And I will agree with you there 100%.
It's a beautiful place to grow. It's a beautiful place to grow crops, but it has some other challenges.
That's true.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Myron to talk about talk about his particular machines and maybe how they could work. And if anybody has questions, we'll just kind of open it up. If you have a question, just you can turn on your mic or you can throw something in the chat. I will probably have to, I may have to read the question. That might be the easier way to do that. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you, Myron.
Okay, let's go to the first slide, Kirk.
Okay, you should be there or you want the real slide, not just the
first. Just go to the okay. First real slide. Yeah. Okay, again, I'll give you a little bit of background. I've been involved in the machinery equipment business, specifically the vineyard equipment business, for over 25 years. He mentioned Stockton, California. I work quite a bit in the Lodi district, in the Woodbridge district, so that'll kind of give you an idea. Okay, the reason for mechanical weed control, it's been around for a long time. People have tried different types of berm, mowers, plows, and this kind of thing. But the big thing about mechanical weed control is it eliminates the usage of agrochemicals. They can get down into the soil and the feeder roots. Not all soils are the same. Doesn't matter whether you're in Oregon or Texas, Georgia, or whatever the case may be. All the soils are different. And they're a lot more porous. So you can chemicals that go down through there. All right. The other thing, too, is mechanical weed control. You can deal with different varieties of crops. Now, there are lots of different manufacturers, or number of manufacturers that build different machines. They are primarily from Italy. There's a few of them from France, some from Germany. But they all essentially do about the same type of thing. Okay. Now, what we've found is that when you use mechanical weed control, there are the number one thing now is labor. Okay. Yes, there's agrochemicals and cover crop and this kind of thing, but it's labor, whether it's your labor or hiring labor. All right. And it gets to be expensive, and it's hard to come by. All right. Why don't you go to the next, Kurt? While I'm going through this, if there's any questions, please ask me. Okay. Okay, when you start a vineyard, when you go to lay one out, the first thing you need to decide is, are you going to do mechanical cultivation? All right. The vine row needs to be long. The spacing, the vine spacing needs to be not too short. Some people want to do 4 feet. I've had people who want to do 6 feet, 8 feet, and it's all different. It's all over the boards. But when you put the down the row spacing, you want to make sure that on any kind of machine, no matter whether it's this one that we're talking about, the one that Texas Tech has, or any of them, those heads have to swing back. They have to swing around. They got to swing back, and they have to swing around. And there's different types of heads. So you got to have enough room so that it goes around it and comes back. Okay. The other thing too is that when you lay the vineyard out, you have to decide whether you want flood or drip or berm systems. The easiest one to deal with mechanically is on the flat. That's the easiest, all right? Because you don't, if you have a berm, you've got to take it down, you got to put it back. You got to take it down, you got to put it back, all right? If you're going to have flood, it's essentially the same thing, all right? But if you use drip, and that's the way most people are going now, is the drip line, and as you can see on the right-hand side, should be about 22 inches. What's not standard in the vineyard business is drip line height. They can go anywhere from laying on the ground all the way up to almost on top of the cordon. All right. So realistically, when you lay it out, it should be about 22 inches. And the reason I say that is that there are a number of manufacturers, and each one has different size heads, whether it's mower heads, whether it's bar heads, or whatever the case may be. So at 22 inches, you're really pretty safe. You're pretty good. Okay. The other thing too is that when you go through this and you take a look at it, all these heads either trip back by hydraulics or they trip back by springs. Okay. So you want to make sure that you've got enough room to bring it around. The other thing too is, and there's a picture in here where you're going to see a mower head that's a tall head, that's big. Okay. So there's a number of different types of machines, but 22 will handle that. All right. Now, as far as head selection is concerned in these things, you can use a bar, and that's what Texas Tech has. You can use rotary tillage. You can use a rotary mower. You can use a flail mower. Cosmetically, if you have a winery, or you want to have your vines look really nice, okay, cosmetically, a flail mower does the best. All right, because it's going to cut that grass up, it's going to cut the weeds up, and it's going to lay it out there much finer than a rotary. Rotary will make it long. Flail will not do that. Okay. Am I going too fast? Any questions?
Hey, Myron. So we were limited in our choices of heads because our drip line is at 12 inches, which is or 14, fairly normal. So
right.
We didn't have a lot
of. Are you going to elaborate more on the plant spacing and the row spacing?
Okay. Paul, you're breaking up on me. Say it again. Say the question again.
So you talk about vine row, the row spacing and the plant spacing. Is there an ideal number to be able to do mechanical work?
Nothing under 6 feet. Nothing under 6 feet. Ideally, if you could do 7 feet, it all depends on how many vines per acre you want to put in. Okay.
Yeah, so that's row spacing, but what about between the plants? Are you after roughly the same spacing between the plants?
Okay, row spacing is concerned. Okay. I don't like to see anything go too narrow, because yes, you can get the machines, but the cost of the machines to do that, or the narrower it gets, the more expensive they get. It's probably the easiest way to put it. Okay. As far as row spacing, if you can do 10-foot row spacing, 9-foot row spacing, you're in good shape. Okay. When you get down to 6 foot, 4 foot, the machinery costs get astronomical. All right. When you go to 12 foot, you can do that. It's not going to hurt anything, but that's pretty much, that's pretty much the way they used to do it. They don't do it so much anymore that way. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one, Kirk. Are we there? There you go. Okay, if you take a look at the row spacing, as you mentioned, okay, if you go too narrow, what happens is on the tractors, you get into getting over and driving over the feeder roots. okay, which you don't want to do, right? So if you go wider, if you go 9 foot or 10 foot, and you have a narrower tractor, okay, then the feeder roots have a chance to get out and not be compacted by the tractor itself. Okay. The thing that lots of growers need to remember is two things. Okay. On the tractor, when you weight a bias belt tractor or a radial, you make a bias out of it. You take the advantage of a radial tire completely out of it. So you don't want to weight it, you don't want to water it, you don't want to do anything. You want to adjust the air pressure, make sure the air pressure is correct. Okay. And make sure that it's narrow enough you can do that. But vine spacing for cultivation is critical. You can get the airflow, you get sunlight, you get healthier vine growth, this kind of thing. You get it allows for air movement, allows for when you're going to spray, you get that kind of thing. All right. So row management is a big thing because you have to think above and beyond the in-row cultivation, tractor sprayers and this kind of thing. Once you do that, it's pretty much solid for a undervine cultivation. Let's go to the next one, Kurt. You can see that. You see how it flails out of there?
Yes. Was that the flail mower?
Typical speed on this is you're going to operate about 2.5 to 2.5 miles an hour.
Okay. And that was the flail mower, right?
That's the flail mower right there. Right. Yeah, that's the flail mower right there. Now that was put in some. Usually, what happens in a lot of cases, you go into some heavy area that hasn't been taken care of, because a lot of guys want to see what happens worst case, which I can understand because the worst case always happens. Now, in this slide, in this video, in that, the one that go to the next one, yeah. Right there. Okay, in this one, this was done in fairly dry ground, but what I wanted to show on this is that on these hydraulic machines, whether it's a flail mower or whether it's the rotary cutter or the rotary tiller, okay, when you play that, these are adjustable in and out. So you can move them in and out to accommodate for what you're going to get involved with. You don't want to go too far over because it doesn't have a chance to retract back, but it is adjustable. And now this is the same pretty much on all these machines that are built. They're all pretty much operate under the same basic design. Okay. Adjustability, want to make it easier for the operator, that kind of thing. All right. The only time you ever really get into anything that's substantially different is if you get into a machine that does not have its own power source, you have to plug into the back of the tractor. That's fine. It's less money. However, the tractor has to be up to snuff hydraulically to make sure that there's the right amount of hydraulics and hydraulic pressure that goes into those heads so they operate correctly. Because if they're too weak, if they're too slow, then you have vine damage. So if you want to play that, that'll kind of give you an idea.
Okay. All right. Want to go to the next slide?
You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did someone have a question?
Okay. So a question is on the chat, it says, if the vines are 5 feet apart, will the machines work? So
Yes,
5 feet
yes,
between vine,
yes.
or, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing you have to do is you have to go slower. You can't go as fast. The machine has to be set. They all have to be set correctly, but they have to be set so they're going to retract back and then and go forward again. But yes, you can do it at 5 feet. You can be done at 5 feet. You're just going to have to drive slower. You just can't go so fast. Okay. Now, on any undervined piece of machinery, it doesn't make any difference what it is. You need to have a stable chassis. Okay. The tractor, no matter what brand it is, no matter what it is, needs to be a stable unit. All right. Importantly, on tractors with undervined tillage that are operating on a 3-point hitch, the 3-point hitch has to be well maintained and it has to be tight. You can't have a loose 3-point hitch floating around back there because what's going to happen is the machine itself is going to go back and forth. All right. And it all boils down to you don't want to take out vines, and that's what will happen. All right. So it needs to be firm. Okay. You don't have to have um, high horsepower because it doesn't take high horsepower to operate these machines. You know, tractors are fine. You can get away with 35 or 40 horsepower, whatever the case may be. The only thing you want to remember is that when you buy a tractor, it needs to be able to handle everything that you in the vineyard. So spraying, if you use a vineyard incorporator or anything such as that, you want to be able to do that. The other thing too is that make sure that you have a tractor that is designed for vineyards. Or just a regular standard old tractor that goes down through there just because it fits doesn't mean that it's going to. Gear speeds are critical. Okay, you want to know the number of speeds under 5 miles an hour because that's going to allow you to make that machine work with the tractor correctly. The other thing too is, as I said in there, avoid compaction. If you have a 10-foot row, outside on the tires, stay away from the feeder roots. Okay.
Hey,
Any
Myron,
questions on that?
my other comment is,
Okay.
you also
Go
need
ahead.
really smooth vineyard floor. So if it's uneven from the beginning, it will bounce around on you or move where you don't want it to move, the tractor, and hence the implement. So
Yeah, the soil, the vineyard floor is critical. We do a lot with the vineyard incorporator, and what we're doing is we're trying to lay that out so it's table flat. Okay, because if you get into mechanical pruning or mechanical or spraying or anything such as that, if the floor is not even, if it's not flat, the machines themselves won't work correctly because it's impossible for them to operate because they're going to be on a fixed plane, and if they're moving around, you're not going to get coverage on a sprayer. And if you have a mechanical trimmer, you're going to cut things you don't want to. Okay, you want to go to the next one? Okay, one of the reasons I showed that is mentioned, Kirk, the floor. There's a bad floor right there. Okay, all right. That is a floor that is very difficult to operate in the bottom. It does show the narrow John Deere tractor 5000 series, which is about 55 inches outside to outside. And a 10-foot vineyard. On the upper photograph, that is a in-row mower on a down the row mower in an apple orchard. Okay, all right, and that's what's known on that particular machine. That's called what's known as an X-Fast. All right, but the reason I showed that to you is because it gives you an idea of other types of machinery that's out there where you can do undervine cultivation on mowers. But just remember, it's very expensive. When you get to that kind of thing, it gets expensive, and you have to look at what your costs are and what you're going to get out of it. But that's an option. The other thing too is if you look at that head, that's tall. That's a tall head. You have to have that head needs about at least 14 to 16 inches to clear for sure. Okay. I think we pretty much covered the weight, the attachment, the
Can I ask you a
traction.
question?
You don't. Sure.
So you comment about not putting extra weight in the tires. So what do you do if it's a
Yes, sir.
hillside planting, or you know what I mean?
Okay, if you're in a hillside, if you're in a hillside situation, okay, all right, if you can put front weights on like that John Deere is right there, okay, all right, you're better off to put the more weight in the front rather than on the back, because the back is going to create more compaction. All right, you are going to have to weight it at some point if you're going to be hillside. There's no getting around it. Just be careful how much weight you put in it. Okay, if you can use steel ballast, that's the best way to go. Stay away from liquid, if possible. Okay. Kirk, you want to use the next one?
Sure.
This is Texas Tex machine. All right. And this will kind of give you an idea. It's 3-point hitch. All right. You've got PTO driven. It's all 540. Now, on the tractors, there are a number of tractors out there that have 540 economy, which is perfectly fine to use. It'll do exactly what you want to do. You don't have to use the higher 540. Okay. On the right side, it's joystick controlled for operator ease. You want to have it as easy for the operator as possible. Okay. The other thing too is you want to have as much instantaneous control as you can get. As I mentioned earlier, you can use springs, you can use hydraulics. Okay. Hydraulics always work quicker. Okay. And if you're going to use springs, you have to make sure that you have the right spring that's in there. Okay. You don't want anything that's too tight. You don't want anything that's too loose. All right. Cost wise, the springs are cheaper. Okay. But they require more attention to what you're doing. Okay.
Hey, Myron,
The underbind slicer bar with the berm on the yes.
can you explain what the joystick can and can't do, or what, it's got an emergency.
Yeah, you've got an emergency stop on it. Okay. If you have a problem with it, okay. The joystick, when you saw the mower head, the mower head will be operated by the joystick in and out, that kind of thing. All right. Also the up and down movement. All right. The machine itself, if you look to the one on the left-hand side, the Texas Tech machine is fully enclosed. All right. Meaning it doesn't plug into the tractor. It's got its own power source. It's got its own fan. It's got everything. All right. Ideally, that's probably the best way to go, because you don't ever know what you're going to have hydraulics out of the tractor. Tractor hydraulics are all over the board. Okay. They usually pump out a certain amount of GPM, but it has to be right in order for the machines to work. Yes, they're cheaper for sure. Okay. But you have to make sure the tractor can't be old and it has to be well maintained.
And the other point about the separate hydraulic system is it has its own cooling fan, so that's not really an option with the tractor. I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah, the thing that you have to remember, is the hotter it gets, the thinner the oil gets. The thinner it gets, the slower it operates. Okay. So when you have high ambient temperature, you want to do this and you want to go out to work. Okay. And the machine is not reacting, or any machine is not reacting the way it should. The ambient temperature very well is making that oil too hot. When you have a machine such as this, it's got its own cooler, it's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about any of that. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I went through it pretty quick. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you. Kirk, anything?
I'll let anybody else have any questions. So
If I had a question, if there was
Yeah.
you already had an existing tractor,
Yes.
Kubota,
Yeah.
are there certain models that are better? That's currently what we're operating with, and we have a John Deere, but the Kubota seems to be a little more versatile.
No, there really isn't one that's any really better than the other. The only thing you have to look at on the tractors is ground speeds. Or the ground, do you have the right speed combination under 5 miles an hour? Okay, you can operate that machine correctly. That's the first thing. The other thing too is it is it, as far as horsepower is concerned, is it really more than what you need? And the other thing too is the width. Just make sure that it's in narrow enough so you don't crush down the vines. Each one of those vines, if you're on drip irrigation, has got a wet circle of about 24 inches. That's really kind of where you, if you can get inside that, you want to be inside that wet circle. If you can get inside the wet circle, because then you don't have the moisture in the soil compacting the feeder roots. That will reduce your yields.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And I misspoke a little bit about always having to need moisture in the soil, because the only thing I've ever used is things that operate in the soil. So if you're using the mower head, that doesn't matter. So just a point of clarification.
Yeah, if you're using a mower, right? If you're using a mower, it's not going to matter. Anything else?
Okay, so we did have a question about what are some companies that sell these implements? And so I assume the question is about the end dealer.
Yeah, we go through dealerships. All the suppliers, anybody that makes these machines goes through dealerships. You want to remember is whatever dealership you buy these things from, that they have a service department, no matter what the brand is. The other thing too is they have a parts department that can take care of it. Right? There's a number of very good brands. There's machines. The majority, like I said, of Italy, France, and Spain. Just make sure that you have a dealership that can take care of the products in which you have bought, whatever it may be. Dealers.
And I mean, your company is Gearmore, so you're the manufacturer. So do you have parts in the States instead of having to?
Yeah, I work directly with the manufacturers. The brands that we carry, and actually is the Speedo brand. We carry that brand because of the wide range of machines that they offer, and I would encourage you to Google it up. That particular company deals primarily with underbind tillage machinery. That is something that they do, and they get into the dual sides, which we've worked with. There are a number of other companies that do it, all right, but they don't have as much expertise as this one. Okay, they are very good. Okay, there's nothing wrong with them.
And I guess the question that'll be okay to ask, what dealers do you sell through?
I do business with Ewald Kubota, the Ewald Group out of Fredericksburg, all right, Marble Falls, that kind of thing. I do business up in the High Plains area with Terry County Tractor. They carry the product line. Okay, I have pretty much dealers in different areas. Yeah. So it all depends upon what area you're going to be involved with.
Virginia, I think so. Even so.
Can you talk to us a little bit? And I know dealers are probably setting final price. Can you talk to us about magnitude and impact of the different products that you sell, just in terms of cost, MSRP, anything like that, so we could better understand that?
Yeah, if you take a look at the flail mower that you saw in that video, okay, suggested list price on that machine is going to be around $20,000. To give you an idea, okay? If you take the power pack off it and you go to a different brand, you can be in that 13, 14, 15,000, okay? And that's on a single-sided unit. If you got real intense and want to go to a double-sided unit, it costs you $55,000 to $60,000. Okay, so it all depends upon what your need is and where your cost. These machines need to be cost effective. All right. So if you can figure out what your labor cost is going to be, how much it's going to cost you to get, even if you can even get labor, which some people can't. All right. Okay. And the other thing too is how much time do you want to do it? And each head is different. Each head is different. Flail mower is going to be different from a rotary tiller head. Rotary tiller head is going to cost $3,000 more. Okay. And that's on a single side.
And then talk to us about the market. Tractors are often purchased with some hours on them. You get them at a reduced rate, and they have lots of lifespan left. Do these accessories work in the similar way? Is there a large used market, and what is your thought just in terms of your own products on the used market?
Yeah, on the tractor end of things, there's a lot of riller returns to use for gondola use in California and other areas. Okay, where all they're doing is pulling gondolas. As far as implements are concerned, most of the time, 99% of the time, they are not used. People buy them, they use them, they don't trade them in. And the big thing is you're not going to get the hours and the acreage out of these like the undervine tillage. Okay, you're going to get a tractor. You're going to use a tractor. You're going to use it a lot more. Okay, you can take the machine off, buy new tractors. So if you take a look at the number of hours and the acres that go on these machines, many times they're going to outlast a tractor 2 and 3 times because you're going to sell or trade that tractor for other uses.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Anything else? Myron did work for a John Deere dealership for a long time, so he has a lot of experience. So all right. Well, so if there's not any other questions, I think
well, thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it. Okay. Thanks. If there's any, like I said, if you think of any questions down the road, get a hold of Kurt, and you can get a hold of me, and I'll be glad to help you with them.
Thank you for your presentation.
You bet. Thank you very much. You bet.
Thank you so much. Thank you.